Welcome to our first special episode of Foreplay, and we're calling this One Night Stand. And what is One Night Stand, you might ask? Well, we wanted...
I think I know
in our context.
Yeah, all right, I see.
Clip that.
Well, you see, children, no. What we're doing with this special episode of Foreplay is that normally we obviously have the 4 movie arcs, hence the name Foreplay. But what we wanted to be able to do was react a little bit quicker to things that come out that are good, or if we have ideas for special content.
Not in this episode necessarily, but yeah, true. In general, Monty.
Have you heard of the show?
We're doing a quick reaction to the black and white Twilight Zone.
1961.
Got to get on that before it gets out of date, you know.
It's only 65 years old now, guys. Anyway,
but basically, put it this way: it's what everyone actually wants, Monty. They always say the second any famous actor dies, please do a thing. It's like the problem is we do these arcs like a month in advance. So first of all, we can't really do that anyway. Then secondly, sometimes I'm sorry, it isn't warranted just because someone's a famous actor for them to be like the 11th arc that we ever did or whatever, like 4 whole movies. So it is more reasonable to have something where we could do one classic movie or something in it. Yeah,
right. And especially, you know, there are films that have come out that we've said, this movie was actually kind of good. You know, if it was Nosferatu and we can build a cool arc around it, we will do that. But, you know, like Weapons
we could have done that for this one. What we could have actually done is we were already going to do an Eggers Hall arc. But if that had been one where there wasn't an arc ready, you could have just done the 1970 Klaus Kinski one just as like that's like a preview almost. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's to give us more mobility, basically, right?
Yeah, and we're going to try and either put these as additional specials without disrupting the middle of an arc, or we'll try and like slot them in, you know, between arcs. We're looking at things right now. It's not going to be every movie that gets hyped that comes out. It's probably going to be just the ones that are actually good. For example, you know, the new Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein is coming out. That's going to be on streaming, I believe, a few weeks after it gets released in theaters. You know, we have Running Man, the Edgar Wright remake of that film that's coming out. So we're keeping an eye on a few of these things. And if they are good and we're excited to talk about them, that is when we will do it. So you don't get to pick. And sometimes, like I was saying, Weapons kind of blindsided. I haven't seen it yet, but Richard has saw it and said it was really good. Yeah, and, you know, people wouldn't have known that was going to be good, and it received a bunch of hype after it came out. So there are things like this that we just want a little bit more nimbleness to. And in the case of Twilight Zone, we wanted to do something cool for Halloween. It also allows us to do things like a few TV shows, which we never do, right? And especially very episodic TV shows. And the purpose of doing the Twilight Zone for Halloween is that Richard and Thorin, I am not a Twilight Zone enthusiast. Richard and Thorin have selected what they consider to be the 4 scariest. Richard is really the expert.
This would be if I was on Mastermind. Twilight Zone trivia would be my subject. It's the only thing. It's the only thing I'm actually a fan of, like a genuine fan, mentally ill in all that fandom.
Only the original Twilight Zone, right, Richard? Are you a fan of any of the reboots over the years?
The 80s reboot has some really good episodes, and also ushered in, much like the original Twilight Zone did, the 80s reboot ushered in a lot of reboots for other
Outer Limits,
things like the Outer Limits, and
if you like these, you surely have some appreciation for all those Anthology ones.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I'm a big fan of all of those too, but the Twilight Zone is the progenitor, and Rod Serling, unlike a lot of other showrunners for these anthology shows. First of all, Rod Serling was an incredibly good man, like a good person. He genuinely believed in the medium of television for the betterment of society. And the Twilight Zone addresses loads of topical issues for the time. On top of that, he also wrote something like 68 episodes himself of television,
including most of these ones that we're going to watch today,
and was friends with incredible writers, most notably probably Richard Matheson, where he even, for one of the episodes we're going to cover today, Rod Serling had permission from Richard Matheson to essentially adapt one of his short stories called Disappearing Act. And, you know, to have that kind of you know, input into television is incredible. And of course, he's on camera himself, not really as an actor, but as a narrator, which is sort of a trope that has been emulated through the years. So I mean, Rod Serling,
and especially because he's very distinct in his form of narration, just immediately recognizable parodied every which way. And it's really, when we talk about the Twilight Zone, it's the legacy of this show that matters. If you are younger, you might know Black Mirror, right, which was famously developed in the UK.
No Black Mirror without this.
Black Mirror doesn't exist without the Twilight Zone. If you've seen a ton of parodies over the years of the Twilight Zone, it always starts with somebody doing a Rod Serling impersonation of his
Billion Simpsons ones on a Horror.
Futurama.
Picture a man.
By the way, that's another thing that the other shows don't have. Anytime I hear that, imagine the world where even that voice I'm staying. That's like
I mean, I'll also add, like, I watched the Jordan Peele reboots, and with that CBS, and there was a good couple of episodes in there, but it did kind of like tail off, and like, for me, I think it's kind of a shame, because it's a great intellectual property, and people are writing really cool short stories that could be like adapted into a modern Twilight Zone. So I hope it sort of comes back in a way, and I think it's good that the torch was passed on, even if the show wasn't very good. I mean, for me, there should always be a Twilight Zone in existence in some form.
Well, it feels like, unfortunately, they're moving away from it, Richard, because you can tell, because if you guys have been to like a Disneyland somewhere in the world, the very famous ride Tower of Terror was Twilight Zone inspired. And they have now rebranded it as a Guardians of the Galaxy ride. So they took out all the Twilight Zone theming, including what was a very cool like Rod Serling narration at the start of the ride, and then rethemed it as Guardians of the Galaxy. So you can't even visit that anymore. So I have to say, doesn't look like it's coming back.
there is also a movie which is cursed as fuck, but the premise of the movie was they got a bunch of like directors to do the segments. Spielberg directs a segment in it. John Landis directed a segment in it, and killed 2 kids, literally by not adhering to safety laws with a helicopter shoot. The helicopter careened out, and there's incredibly there is actually footage you can find on the internet of the rotor blades just absolutely butchering people, which is horrifying. A lot of people thought, it's cursed. There was a lot of that going around at the time. So the Twilight Zone's had this insane tapestry of televisual and cinematic history for pretty much since it came into existence in 1959. I wanted to show this. If people are interested, you can still get this. This is the 60th edition Twilight Zone Blu-ray Cube. And what's great about this, they really pulled out all of the stops. It comes with a companion guide for every episode. It comes with a recreation of the Twilight Zone comic book series, which became popular with all the strange tales and that kind of stuff. For every episode, it has not only the sponsor reads by Rod Serling for when they were doing the shows live, it's also got the narration he would do at the end of a show, setting up next week's episode, which of course they're not in syndication right now. All the audio and pictures.
You can get it on Paramount Plus, though, if you have that streaming service. That's where I watch it, so it's very handy.
It's got all of the audio all cleaned up, and on the more legendary episodes, it's got all of the commentary from notable actors and directors. I'll also add, I'm so much of a fan, they made a limited edition set of action figures. That is Dr. Bernardi from the Eye of the Beholder episode, which I deliberately didn't pick for this because it probably is the scariest, but it's one everyone's seen. And I've got most of these on the back. I have a set in the garage. And I will be presenting trivia as we go through the episode using the Twilight Zone Companion 2nd edition, written by Mark Scott Zachary. So,
by the way, we didn't know he was going to do any of this, so here we are.
But I just want to show it's a genuine affection for this
I love
TV
it.
show.
I look forward to being educated. And if you guys don't know what the Twilight Zone is, it is, in brief, an anthology show that was broadcast in the early 1960s. And well, it started in 59, but went through 1963. There are 5 seasons. The first few seasons are all like 30-minute episodes or 25-minute episodes, and then it goes into hour-long episodes. Obviously, these would have been with commercial breaks on normal television at the time. And they were aired and each one is not connected to the next one, and they are more or less like thought experiments about weird phenomena or strange situations, supernatural occurrences, and they often are commentaries on society or philosophical quandaries that are explored through the lens of the paranormal or science fiction.
Yeah, I mean, as I've said, a lot of the memorable episodes, they really do explore those themes, and people will pull out episodes that are considered classics, like The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, for instance, which is, it looks to be like an alien invasion, interfering with the electricity. Everyone's accusing everybody on Maple Street, this small suburb, of being involved in it, and they all turn on each other, start fighting each other, and then it just cuts away to alien invaders on a hill saying, and this is all we have to do in every neighborhood, and yet they come apart so easily, these humans, and then they fuck off, and so they make all these like profound points about humanity. Like Rod Serling very much was a humanitarian that really wanted to, he like abhorred racism, he abhorred sexism, although obviously for the time you are going to see some baked in misogyny into some of these episodes, but not because Serling was still radically progressive for his time. The reason I didn't pick any season 4 episodes is because they go to an hour long. They're the ones that usually aren't in syndication and are hard to get, although I understand Paramount finally put them on their to view service. Rod Serling wanted to basically make more prestige episodes of television because Play for the Day was running at the same time, and that was like an hour long as well. And so he thought, well, if we move to that, we can explore some better scripts. And some of those episodes are good, don't get me wrong, but I would say what really holds up is the format. The Twilight Zone format is goated. I mean, this is like, for me, this is the greatest television show of all time. You have an intro scene that piques your interest, it's intriguing, you turn around, Rod Serling just appears from nowhere.
Adam Grant, a nondescript kind of man found guilty of murder and sentenced to the electric chair. Like every other criminal caught in the wheels of justice, he's scared, right down to the marrow of his bones.
Foreplay is sponsored by Raycon. And if you guys are watching on your phone, our delightful show of Foreplay, you may be listening with some headphones, and why not pick up some new Raycons, either for yourself or as a gift? A stocking stuffer is a great choice for Raycon these holidays. So not only that, but if you guys don't like earbuds directly in your ear canal, you can check out the new Essential Open earbuds, which wrap around the backside of your ear and sit on top of your ear, but are still very, very portable. They also allow you to easily hear everything that's going on around you. So new Raycon styles are now in stock. If you just want the traditional, well, here you go. Here are their everyday earbuds. These are, of course, earbuds that go directly into your ear canal. This is their latest model. They've worked great for me. They have active noise cancellation as well as transparency mode, so you could either choose to hear what's going on around you or not. They're very small, and they're just as good as much more expensive headphones on the market. So they have the same premium quality as the big brands, but half the price. Add in over 3 million happy customers and a 30-day happiness guarantee. So if you guys don't like them, just send them back. And there's zero reason to overpay. They also come in a variety of cool colors besides black. So if you want something a little flashier, you can definitely do that as well. So whether you guys are going with the Essential Open earbuds, their new model, or the classic everyday earbuds, you can head on over to buyraycon.com and pick yours up. Black Friday is just around the corner. Raycon audio products are off up to 30% off site-wide. From everyday essentials to the latest releases, it's the perfect time to upgrade your sound or get ahead on gifting. These early deals won't last long. Shop now before they're gone. Go to buyraycon.com/4playopen. That's FOURPLAYOPEN to save on Raycon audio products site-wide. Thanks for supporting our show.
Right, with the clever bit of camera trickery. Picture a man about to enter into a world of pain.
Except he has that clipped cadence. Picture
yeah,
man.
exactly.
Who?
Yeah. It's so good. I believe William Shatner.
It's
William
so,
Shatner
it's
went
so
to the Rod
iconic.
Serling and then obviously you get into the episode. The episode pulls you, pushes you. There's a twist. Sometimes you see it coming. Sometimes you don't. Rod Serling narrates what it all means. Scroll up to the sky. Stars Twilight Zone out in 25 minutes. And there's a reason this has a 9.0 on IMDb. It is simply a wonderful experience. And so for Halloween, wanted to pick 4 episodes out that I think are spooky, might make you think.
Notice though, one thing you've also done is you have avoided what I think are the cliche. And I know we're on the similar page, so the cliched episodes. Like,
of course.
Like for example, when someone tells you "Time Enough at Last" is the best one, they are just a dickhead who I don't even believe has watched the Twilight Zone. I think you saw a YouTube clip. That one is whack. Then also like the other classic ones is look, just because it's famous, the fucking horror at 20,000 feet or whatever, the one with the plane. That it's the problem with these ones is you've seen all these concepts already. So I think you've also done a good job selecting. And To Serve Man was the one obviously parodied by The Simpsons.
Which
these ones are just hacked at this point in time. The ones Richard has picked, the ones that you won't get the premise, you won't have seen it before.
Yeah, exactly. And look, there's oftentimes it veers into comedy in an almost like unintentional way. Like, but whenever the Twilight Zone does comedies, there are some stinkers. Rod Serling couldn't write comedy. I mean, we need to be abundantly clear about that. And they did do some episodes that were meant to be funny, and they are terrible. I mean, they are absolutely appalling. But the ones that are meant to be like, ooh, look at the twist, sometimes they're very funny. And I think To Serve Man is a great example of that. Again, I'll ruin the twist for everybody because, you must have seen that one if you in the Twilight Zone or if you watch The Simpsons. But basically, it's like, this alien species called the Canamites come down. It's played by that motherfucker who played Jaws in the movies. He's got a cone head on, but he's just massive. And obviously, he's a very alien-looking dude. He had gigantism, right? So he's there, and they communicate telepathically in English, and they say, we're here to help mankind, to serve man. We're going to give you a cure for cancer. We're going to give you limitless energy. And America's like, wow, this is fucking rad and cool. Love these guys. But there's like one dude, he might be a journalist or some shit, because of course, he's like thinking, what's their angle? What's their angle? And it's actually told out of sequence. It starts with him in a prison cell on board the alien ship. And you're like, well, how did he get here? Well, anyway, he steals a book from the Canamite species.
The hilarious part, Richard, is this is another thing that hasn't aged that well. Like the entire mechanism of that episode is just really slowly being shown parts of a sentence written on a book.
Yeah, exactly.
which at the time was probably sick, but now it's like some meme shit, isn't it? It's like, what are you doing?
Well, listen, all I'm gonna say is, could we have had a rival without this episode? Who knows?
True.
But anyway,
True.
They're literally translating this alien cipher. And then when they get it, they realize that the treatise, To Serve Man, it's a cookbook. And they're going to eat you all. They're going to eat you all. And it's how
which is also, if you think about it, insane, because that's actually like a weird play on specifically in English how you can have two different meanings of the word serve. Like the whole thing's actually mad.
These aliens
they have the same double entendre as English. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know, it's just so the nose. It is a good. If you've never seen it before, it's good. But sadly, I think it's impossible to encounter that without having somehow known that concept. And surely it's out there in society and culture,
Yeah, and like a lot of these, I tried to spread them mostly between the first 2 episodes, which I think, broadly speaking, are the
2 seasons.
2 seasons, I should say. Sorry. That's kind of where the best work was done. So, without any further ado, what episode would you like to talk about first?
Well, our 4 episodes that Richard selected as the scariest Twilight Zone episodes were A Good Life, The After Hours, and When the Sky Was Opened. Yeah, and we switched the last one. What was the
we switched it from 22 because I misremembered that being scary.
Yeah,
the nightmare part's scary to me still, but the ending and the ending's good, but the middle, the characters are so insufferable. I totally forgot that. Yeah. Like it's like her agent is like, "Come on, kitty cat, you're the best stripper in town." It's like, what the
it is a funny period piece, to be fair.
Yeah.
The 1960s pimp and stripper,
the combo. So we switched that up to Shadow Play.
Shadow Play, that's right.
I would say we start with the one that was the first one. It's actually the latest of the four. It's a Good Life. By the way, this is actually one on my side channel. I did a video where I picked out single episodes out of Anthology shows, and this was the one I picked from the Twilight Zone. I actually think this is the best Twilight Zone episode. This one is fucking mega, and I have actually never seen, fully enough. I think maybe they might have done it on The Simpsons, but I don't think I've ever seen this one parodied. Like this isn't one where...
They did. Bart Simpson.
Right.
Yes, they did one of the
He turns Homer into the Jack in the Box.
Okay. Yeah. But I do put it this way. I think also, here's something else is cool. This is actually one of the ones where the twist ending isn't really even a twist. It's actually horrific, I think, because I think it sets it up like there's going to be a crazy twist, and you keep thinking. Like, essentially, the premise of this one is the one where you go to like a little small farming town that's not even on the map anywhere. It just looks like normal everyday America, you know, the white picket fence and the community, and you know, you meet a family that seems normal, and the notion is there's a boy. Obviously, these are all spoilers, by the way. If you watch this episode and you then get to complain about getting spoiled, you are an utter dickhead. It's the fucking Twilight Zone, you absolute twat. So the premise of this one basically is it turns out there's a boy.
The statute of limitations is over. It's 60 years old anyway.
There's a boy who basically has like telekinesis and more than that, and he's almost like a genie basically. He can just sort of do with his mind whatever he wants, including like basically just sort of make you delete you from existence. And famously, when he's angry, he just makes you disappear and teleport into a cornfield, right? And what it turns out basically is, I've always thought, I've never heard what anyone's logic was. This is like a metaphor for like totalitarianism, or like what a tyrant would be like, or what it would be like to live under Stalin, because you know all those things we all meme at now, like, oh, comrade, why have you stopped clapping? You know, and all that, or like people getting deleted from photos. That seems funny to us now because we don't have to face the reality of it. The worst thing ever would be the awkwardness of actually living under that and knowing, which I feel like is the whole vibe of the episode. This is what the genius is, that it's a 4 twist. If you think about this episode, I'm almost certain you're going to join me. You're watching it 2/3 of the way through, and you're like, right, how are they possibly going to get him though? Like, because what it's sort of implying is what happens with a tyrant, which is the reason why people don't get overthrown like Stalin is if you try to do it and you fail, you are dead. Your whole family is dead. If say you get like 1/3 of the people that you need to do it and you don't get it done, you're all dead. You're all tortured. You're all fucking brutalized. Yep. You basically have to have like a certain tipping point, and you have to have enough people in on it, and you basically all have to know that no one's going to step back as we step forwards and ruin, or we're all fucked. And so essentially, it's actually a great metaphor for society, isn't it? One of the reasons why violent crime happens is everyone on the boss doesn't grab the guy. Everyone individually goes, fuck, I don't want to. And so I think this is one of the best metaphors I've ever seen for that, because genuinely when I'm watching this, I'm thinking, how are they possibly? And then the twist is they don't. You can't do shit against this guy. You have to basically just be his slave. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, so there's a lot going on in this episode. There was a lot of angst at the time, societally speaking, about younger generations. And you will find a plethora of scary movies that are ultimately about like what would happen if the youth were more powerful than adults, right? And you know, we're talking 60s, so there's a very real anxiety about that.
Valid concern, like things like the Maoist revolutions and stuff. Correct, you could even say a lot of the stuff today politically is driven by that.
I think probably what I like about this episode is it really differs from a lot of that media, which always had a happy ending where the established order is victorious. A good example of this is Village of the Damned, if you've seen it, you know, with the psychic children with the light up eyes, and they can read everyone's thoughts, so they know whenever anyone's planning against them.
Surely influenced by this episode too.
I mean, almost certainly. And how that movie ends is basically the teacher decides he's gonna fucking kill all the kids. He takes a bomb in a suitcase and then sits down to class and basically is saying, I mustn't think about the thing. I mustn't think about the thing over and over and over again in his mind. And the children are going, bee, like reading his brain. And he's like just trying desperately to get to the point where the bomb explodes, and he ices them all and saves the town. No such luck in this episode. Unfortunately, Bill Mooney as the kid in this episode is fucking terrifying.
Really good acting job by him.
He nails the little brat, like he has that Joffrey from Game of Thrones vibe where you're like, I hate this so fucking much. Yeah.
Well, Bill Mooney, incredibly, he was in 3 episodes of the Twilight Zone, including one before this. He was in the episode Long Distance Call, which is about, I believe, the dead grandmother calls back because she wants to talk to the kids. He was the youngest in that, and then he was also also in another very well-regarded episode from season 5 called In Praise of Pip, where he plays a younger version of the main character, the titular Pip. He also, they made a sequel to this episode in the 80s reboot, which is called It's Still a Good Life. And they used grown-up Bill Mumy as the actor.
Oh, wow.
And in that story, he's been a monster for 40 years.
Oh, okay.
Destroying the community, but now he's got his own kid. And they're wondering whether or not his daughter will have inherited any of his powers, right? So, and also, it's the best segment of the movie. They remade this for the film. And I think it was directed by Joe Dante, did the It's a Good Life remake. It's the best part of the movie. The reason this holds up is because it can be a cipher for anything, really. I mean, yes, totalitarianism, what it would be like to live in a Stalinist regime is definitely there. You can also read this as a sort of meta commentary on religion, in the sense that if God is all knowing, all prescient, all vengeful all of the time, if those are the terms of your religion or faith, then it would play out something like this. Like, you know, what would happen, you know, the father, they have to be on all the time. The parents, they have to be super good, super nice. They can't be tired. They can't be exhausted. They can't be negative in any way. If he wants to play, if Anthony wants to play, you've got to play. If you don't play, you go in the cornfield. And what does that mean? Well, it's only alluded to in the episode, but he turns you into something horrible, like some human scarecrow hybrid, and he puts you out in the cornfield for X amount of time until he wants to bring you back. It is actually, this is a genuinely scary episode of television.
It's really psychologically terrifying, I think.
Yeah.
You're a bad man. You're a very bad man. And you keep thinking bad thoughts about me.
Wish it into the cornfield. Please, son, wish it into the cornfield, please.
What did you think, Monty?
I think it's really interesting. I agree with your interpretations about authoritarianism, and I think it's important to remember that when this was coming out in the 1960s, you know, the primary audience for this would have really been people who were fighting in World War II, if we think about it, right? These were people who would have lived through World War II, who would have fought themselves against these authoritarian regimes, who are living currently in the Cold War, right? But, you know, these people probably would have been 35, 40 years old if they had been fighting in World War II at the time. So this was certainly a cultural fear that was going on, and something that obviously people were afraid would happen in America, hence the entire existence of the Cold War in the first place, trying to universalize American values around the world. And so I think it is creepy to see this in an American representation, because it shows how small town America would be affected by these, you know, tyrannical leaders. And it's an exploration of that without being explicit, because it's science fiction, guys, about, you know, having a literal person in charge. It's more about if somebody could read your thoughts. And, you know, this also, I think, shows a lot of prescience, because look at today, guys, with facial recognition technology and the internet and snooping through your pride. You know what everybody's thinking now. Yeah. If the government wants to know what you're thinking, they're going to get into your shit. They're going to read everything that you do. They're going to know where you are at all times through geolocation.
In some countries, your thoughts now literally do get you put in jail.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it is essentially, you know, also a commentary on the right to privacy in a way, like having an all-knowing, all-powerful creature that can also read your mind, so you can even be punished for thought crime, essentially.
And I think what it shows too is, like, the people are so afraid of this thing, but it's also them grasping to life. But what kind of life are they really grasping to? And at the end, the showdown is between the person who wants to listen to music with words, which is, again, one of those tyrannical things. They might ban art. I mean, that's another hallmark of authoritarian governments. And so you can't engage with the art. So what is the point of living if you have to live like this? If you are living in a closed off society, he says they took away the electricity, he took away the television, and they could only watch television which is generated by his own thoughts. So it is the propaganda channel, basically.
I mean, basically, yeah, it's like North Korea, but in like Oregon or something.
So and like,
but isn't it better just to like get drunk and like die and get turned into a Jack in the Box than live under the tyranny?
That it's also implied in the episode that obviously you can't die. You're not allowed to even kill yourself. He can just bring you back. So you can't get away from it. Like it's that, which is another extra terrifying component. And you aren't even released in death.
I even think another thing that's very prescient that you can only appreciate now is like things like you're saying, where in the modern day, the joke is, by the way, this movie also incredibly ahead of its time in the terms of the concept of gentle parenting. By the way, spoiler, any input to a system produces the output. So if gentle parenting worked, this would be the least violent generation in the history of the world. Everyone would be awesome. Nobody would be hurting each other. It's the opposite. You have all those problems go the other way instead. So one of the things also about this is it captures another thing about authoritarianism, which is where it's not even that you can't do the action. You can't even say the words, which means eventually you can't think the thought. So crucially, you have to have this for positivity. Like that line they keep hitting over and over again. It's a good thing you did that. That is the fucked up like tone of the modern day. When someone does something that actually is offensive, that actually is harmful to society, you are not only can't say it's bad, you are required to say it is a good thing that they are doing it. And that somehow that you have to brainwash yourself with slogans that this is better for all of us and this is good for society to do it. And obviously, as you guys say, it especially nails what at the time would be quite an alien concept, which is the idea of just having to permanently walk on eggshells and to never be able to make a 1 foot wrong on particular topics. Like I think that's incredibly prescient.
I ain't never seen a gopher with 3 heads before.
I'll make him dead now. I'm tired of playing with him. Be dead. Gopher, you be dead.
My, that's real fine that you done that. That's real fine, Anthony. You're a good boy, Anthony. We all love you. Don't we, Aunt Amy? Don't we love Anthony? Well, we sure do love him. We love that boy.
Look, guys, I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone when I realized that I was still paying a massive amount for my wireless coverage when I don't even really use it that much anymore. If you're like me, you're probably mostly on Wi-Fi, even when you're out and about these days. And so you may be paying for a lot of wireless service that you don't even really need. So that's why I would suggest you switch on over to Mint Mobile. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text, just like you're used to, and it's delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan, and, of course, bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts, and you can ditch those giant overpriced bills with unexpected overages and hidden fees. Plans start at just $15 a month over at Mint Mobile. So you get that same amount of coverage, and you can pick a plan that's probably a lot cheaper if you're not really using all of that unlimited data, which I bet very few people are these days. Plus, if you travel internationally, they also come with international passes that you can purchase with plenty of data for your overseas trip, which is very important for somebody like me who travels abroad relatively frequently. So, are you guys ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/4play, FOURPLAY. That's mintmobile.com/FOURPLAY. Upfront payment of $45 required, which is the equivalent of $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for the first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigs on an unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Yeah, and so just for the trivia, the short story was originally written by Jerome Bixby. And it is considered a modern classic, apparently. I don't know by who. And it was originally printed in 1953 and then reprinted in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame in 1971. Rod Serling contacted Jerome Bixby and read the short story, adapted it for television, and then bought the rights to it within the span of 3 days. Because he was a lunatic, evidently. And Jerome Bixby says he doesn't even know what the story's about. He wrote it in a single weekend in 1953 where he didn't sleep once, and it felt like a fever dream. Oh, and Bill Mumy went on to play Will Robinson in Lost in Space.
Oh, okay. That's okay. I see it now.
There you go.
Rings a bell.
So the next episode.
Which one would you like to do next?
I'll let you guys pick whichever one speaks out.
I think the next one we do is "And When the Sky Opened," because I'm going in order of the ones I think are the best ones. I think this one's a really good one.
Yeah, this is. I deliberately picked this because I wanted to work some Richard Matheson in. Richard Matheson, obviously the writer of I Am Legend, he contributed to a number of real classic episodes. Because I mean, he's like a fantastic contemporary writer at this time, really ahead of his time with the concepts he's putting out. And this was adapted from a short story, Disappearing Act. Richard Matheson did give permission to Rod Serling to adapt it, although I don't think he liked the adaptation. He kind of felt it was so far removed from his original story that he didn't really care about it. So he didn't have anything good to say. He didn't have anything bad to say. So yeah, what did you think of this one? This one really shit me up as a kid because the concept of just disappearing from reality.
I think this one also has a fair element, bro. Yeah.
So I'll jump in. I'll get to the trivia page.
I mean, I would say that this is actually one of the more effective ones. The only aspect that's not as good, but I get that this is just automatically baked in when you do this concept, even in a modern film, is the thing where it's like, obviously, yeah, we get it after 10 minutes, the premise, but you do still have to be like, but then I want to, right, so wait a minute, this thing's disappeared that I wrote down, but I wrote down this other thing. And then wait a minute, everyone that saw me doesn't remember, but I remember talking to you. And then every time, look, I get it that in the time it'd be super revolutionary, but the reveal every time is like, oh, it has changed. And by the way, essentially, here's an angle people won't have thought of. Isn't this entire thing like someone's entire life becomes the Mandela effect and then they get Mandela effect out of reality? There's a fucking prescient angle for you kids. So that's basically what this episode is. And I think, by the way, it is very well executed. Like the order of things he goes through as to what could prove it, etc. By the way, it is another one, though, where the mechanism is cut to a hammer shot, this time of a newspaper, just changing. And if by the time you've seen the second newspaper, if you're actually shocked on the third one, or at the end when she goes, actually, this room's completely empty, then it is for you this series. You know what I mean?
It is predictable.
Come on, pick up the pace, boys. But I do think it's well executed. I agree with Richard.
And also, it's well acted.
They do create a genuine sense. Because think about the order that you go through the people. You do get a genuine sense of the terror each time someone disappears, of like, it's inevitable, it's going to happen to the next person. And I even like that they keep it completely vague. I actually enjoy Mystique. I like the idea. You don't know what happened. Was it aliens? What happened in that zone? Did they die?
Get disappeared by the government?
Yeah, who the fuck knows? It's actually better that you don't know, because that's not really what the episode's about, is it? And I also think, by the way, the actor who plays the second guy who disappears, what a fucking charismatic actor that guy was. He nailed it. He went from being super charming playboy, to the fucking like terrified, and he demanded, and also
the guy from the Birds.
He kills it, bro. He's really good.
Yeah. That's where I know him from, is the Hitchcock's The Birds.
I mean, this was just this episode. Like, I probably watched this when I was like maybe 10 years old for the first time, and that was true for a lot of the Twilight Zone. As I said, my mother had bought our first ever television, probably somewhere in the mix where it was like maybe 8, 9. And I used to sneak down when she was asleep and watch whatever was like late night on Channel 4, and a lot of the times it was Twilight Zone episodes, and I would sit and watch and fuck me up, stay awake all night terrified, and then go to school with eyes like piss holes in the snow and be a zombie for the full day. So this was definitely one of those episodes, because for a child, it's not even
in Wales on a college mining town, fucked up by a late night television show that maybe was more than a show. Like,
exactly.
Something like that.
Yeah, the problem is you're not just thinking about what would happen if you disappeared, but it's like, what if people you cared about disappeared?
It's existential, this episode, isn't it? It's actually genuinely, like, psychologically horrifying. I think this is another good one.
Yeah, and so I mean, like, obviously, there's loads of great bits. There's a really good commentary for this episode on the Blu-ray in that box set. And you know the bit where he's screaming, "Harrington, Harrington," and he just smashes through a glass door.
Hilarious.
Improvised.
Harrington.
Fucking hell, okay.
Actually,
Wait, he
improvised.
literally just walked through an actual glass door. It wasn't like trick glass or anything.
No, it was trick glass. But what they said was his direction note, according to the director Douglas Hayes, who does the commentary, the casting note was do something really erratic. So the actor just walks through.
He's
the
great in this.
fake plate glass.
Rod Taylor is his name. He
Rod
fucking
Taylor.
kills it. in
Even
this
that
one.
scene where you're going like, it's all a joke. It's just a prank. When I go back there, you're gonna be like, even that's like actually he's fucking nailing like how ridiculous you have to overact it in a way, you know.
Yeah. Now, obviously, this originally aired in the end of 1959. People who know like a lot about 1950s movies and 1950s sentiment in science fiction, a lot of it is science going too far? Should we meddle with the unknown? You know what I mean? There's lots of that, like giant insects or, you know, the incredible shrinking man. Well, actually, technically, he didn't meddle with science. He just went through a mysterious fog that may or may not have been man-made. But, you know, like, so there was a lot of that there. And I think this is like a very good continuation of that kind of sentiment. You know, it's
plus with the ambiguity of the space race, right? And this is like right after Sputnik would have been launched. And, you know, what are these secret experiments? Because remember, the space race was just a cover for the development of military technology, because it was basically a pissing competition between the US and the USSR, being like, we can launch rockets into space. Do you know what that means? We can launch nukes at you too.
Yeah,
you know, so it really was,
because people believed all the utopian ideals. People thought that the first people on the moon will have a base, then you'll just fire from the moon down. Again, I don't really know how they thought this would work, but that was like a real concept. Yeah, people thought this was all real shit.
You know, and so obviously as well, like what's great about this episode, it is the mystery. Like I've seen a lot of people, you know, when they've like done reviews of this episode, or you know, people will be like on forums and talking about their favorite episodes. One of the criticisms of this episode, if you can believe it, is nothing is explained by the end, and essentially it loops back
Area
in
51 shit, man. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, I like the process of what was it about the X-20 craft that when it went into the sky and brought the pilots back, that forced them to disappear out of our time continuity and put X-20 back in the fucking, you know, hangar waiting to be used again. You know, what did that? We just don't know. But that's not the important part of the story. The important part of the story is the process of watching these guys who, you know, they're happy-go-lucky flyboys. You know, they're presented as being these people who are, you know, incredibly brave and nothing can faze them, but just being gripped with the terror, knowing that the first domino has fallen and inevitably the second will. And then, of course, you know, Forbes.
The last one's almost a gag, but then they're all gone. And that's
Yeah.
like, this one's just being empty. Like, that's a pretty good joke at the end too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy that by the end as well, it's like, you know, Forbes is trying to explain to the nurse what's going to go on, and you know, it's just great. It's really good, and as I said, I think this is a genuinely scary episode. I nearly picked. There's a similar episode to this, which has astronauts. They crash land on a meteor.
That's a great one.
Yeah, and they put out a rescue beacon, and the fucking, you know, they're like, well, someone will come and get us eventually. They see a ship, and they realize it's them, and they're stuck in a perennial loop of them.
It's a really well done one, though, isn't it?
Yeah. That's
that's
another good one.
This is also just a commentary on the nature of fame, though, because these guys are suddenly famous, right? Like they were military dudes who came back. They're in the papers, right? And then they go out to the bar, and the bartender wants to buy them drinks, and he's sitting there. He's like, "Hey, baby, you know, he's got a wife, we found out later, but he's like got his arm around this woman because she's so enamored with him. What's space like, right? And then they slowly disappear out of the timeline and nobody gives a shit about them anymore, right? So I think it is about the ephemeral nature of fame.
That I like. This is the counter to the point I've made on past episodes, that unfortunately, because you have to get into a story and you can't just spend 1 hour proving the person like, oh, they're lying about me being replaced by a clone. That's not me. You can't spend an hour doing that, right, in a movie. So in a movie, within 5 minutes of traveling back in time, you have to just show someone like tell someone something about their childhood and you go, right, I now believe you literally traveled in time. You have to just do that because otherwise the movie's too long to actually explain. Like, this is the counter to that. This is what would happen if you did do that. What would play out in real life? No one would ever believe you traveled in time. No one would ever believe you came back from the dead. No one would ever believe you saw aliens. It would be like this. You really were deleted. So, of course, they would never eventually go, well, you seem like you really believe. No, in their reality, you were. It never happened. It was deleted.
Yeah.
By the way, I looked it up. The name of the episode Rich just talked
about. That's
called I thought it's one. I shot an arrow into the air.
No, I shot an arrow into the air is the one about the plate. See, this is the other problem with the Twilight Zone. They did so many episodes that explored similar themes. The one I'm talking about is Death Ship, which was also written by Richard Matheson. And it's basically this, but probably done a little bit better. So, but although I like the mystery with this one, that one explicitly is explained. So, but yeah, ultimately that Richard Matheson took the story of the Flying Dutchman.
Oh, actually, yes, you're right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, just so people know the episode to look up. That's a really good one. I would definitely recommend.
Well, it's got who's in that one? I think it's Jack Klugman is the main dude in that one. So, yeah. So that's a really good episode. The reason we aren't picking that though is it is in season 4. It's 1 hour long. It breaks the formula a little bit. So
that's also what I have to say as well. Where it's not actually blatantly obvious early on what's even happening in that one. I think they do actually play that one out pretty well.
Yeah, it is. It's very good. It's another very good episode. But this is essentially the speed run of that, and you get to see a man walk through a plate glass window while looking for his friend. It's the best scene in the episode. But yeah, I mean, I love this episode. This is drenched in existential dread. It really, like, for me, gets under your skin. They're the best Twilight Zone episodes for me. The ones that kind of like, that's not scary, and then tomorrow you kind of like thinking about it, and everything feels a little bit off kilter. Like it's acted upon you, it's changed you. You know, that was what Rod Serling was really, really good at doing. This type of horror, you know, where it's like he always described it as the unknown happening to you. The unknown is happening to you, and nobody else can see it happening to you. That is for Rod Serling the sweet spot of terror, essentially. So, right, next episode. Unless you want some trivia, I've got.
I'm waiting for it.
Well, I mean, the trivia I did say about him improvising the thing, although that was technically
true.
from the commentary. Let me see. They're all bullet pointed. I've got that quote from Rod Serling. It's actually here. It's like, so yeah, he says here. Right. Here we go. Right. So Rod Serling said of fear, in making a judgment, I wish I could do it in his voice. In making a judgment or any analysis or inventory of what are the degrees of emotional reaction and indeed types of emotional reaction, I think there is a universality of reaction to certain given prods. Now, our reaction to fear of a mugging, I think, is relatively universal. There are maybe 8 different types of reactions, but I think you could almost categorize them and put them in a textbook. The worst fear of all is the fear of the unknown working on you, and you cannot share it with others. To me, that's the most nightmarish of stimuli. So there you go. He was a very verbose man, as you can probably tell. So.
Let's talk about shadow play.
So I'm glad I subbed this in because I know Duncan loves this episode as well.
Yeah, it's good. So shadow play is about a man who is having a recurring nightmare and attempting to alert the characters in his nightmare that it is in fact a dream. And the nightmare is that he is being prosecuted and he is going to be executed in an electric chair. And he is trying to convince the other denizens of his dream world that it is a dream. And he fails, and then the entire process starts over again. You'll notice that a lot of these have Prometheus-like themes of your liver gets eaten out and then it regrows, and then your liver gets eaten by the eagle again, right? It's a very Greek mythological.
I mean, like we said about the first one, the inability to escape is in itself incredibly terrifying.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So why did you sub this one in here, Thorin?
Well, okay, so 22 was the original one we did, and 22 is about a recurring nightmare that you can't escape from. That every time you go to sleep, you have a recurring nightmare. In that episode, the stripper slash dancer is basically, she wakes up, she's thirsty, she's anxious, it's the middle of the night, she goes to reach for a glass of water, the glass of water smashes on the floor, she's compelled to walk out of the room, she realizes she's in a strange place, it looks like a hospital, she sees an elevator, like lift shaft happening, and then she turns around, she sees room 22, and a nurse comes out and says, room for one more, honey, and she screams and runs away, and it turns out room 22 is the morgue, right? And then obviously what ends up happening is she checks herself out of hospital after having that dream happen to her a few times, and then she's going to get on a plane, and all the things start happening, and she's about to get in a plane, and the stewardess says, room for one more, honey. And she's
the stewardess is the nurse.
It's the same.
Says
nurse.
Room for one more, honey.
Yeah, she runs away, the plane takes off, and it explodes, and you realize you've just watched the opening scene of Final Destination.
By the way, unfortunately, this is one of those episodes, Richard, that like people like me shouldn't see, because anything that ever confirms like that your like innate skepticism towards people and things could be actually well served.
Life-saving.
Oh, bro, my ego wants to hear that so badly. So low key, like, you know, because you should obviously, in theory, by the way, based on this episode, there is no reason she shouldn't take the flight at the end. It's just a dream, and there's no actual reason. Remember, she's never actually told. This is a key detail of this episode. She has never told the doctor's conclusion of, wait a minute, but how could she describe the room that patients can't go to and know that that's 22? She never gets that information, by the way. So technically, she has no reason to believe that her dreams and delusions are affirmed. But because her gut tells her, don't get on the plane, basically, saves her life.
Yeah. And so ultimately, because it had a happy ending, essentially, and the really dodgy performances in the middle of the episode, I subbed it out for another recurring nightmare episode, which was Shadowplay. And Duncan even suggested this one when we were going to do this arc. And ultimately, I just think this is maybe less hallucinatory than 22, but ultimately, it's a much better story. This is a really robust thought exercise of like what it would, and by the way, if anyone has ever been plagued with recurring nightmares, as I have as a younger man, I used to have a lot of sleep disorders. I was a sleepwalker, sleep talker, horrific, vivid nightmares, you know, where quite literally a lot of them would be death dreams. You know, there's this urban myth that you can't die in your dreams. You absolutely can. I'm here to tell you that you can, and it can be horrible and really disturbing. And, you know, I went through a phase as I was kind of like, you know, it would have been like probably when I was like moving 19 to 20 to 21. Every night I couldn't get a good night's sleep. I would have horrific dreams, shot, stabbed, eaten by sharks, pushed off a building. It was like fucking insane. You know, I used to drive my girlfriend at the time absolutely fucking crazy because waking up with night terrors, it's like such a burden to put on anyone. And so anyway, I get this episode very well because he is plagued every night to go to the electric chair, be electrocuted, wake up screaming in terror, and the universe, the pocket universe created in his mind, implodes, everyone within it dies, and then he goes to sleep again, and guess what? He has to try and convince these figments of his imagination just not to kill him one time, and he cannot ever achieve it. That's the implication by the end of the episode. And what's really good, and why it's called shadow play, and what just elevates the material is that all of the different actors, by the end, we realize are playing different parts. And what's really good is as he sat there, he's going, I know where I got you from. I got you from that movie about convicts I watched. I got you from a Western. You know, I watched
you were a priest when I was a boy.
You were
right?
a priest
Who
when
died.
I was 10. And he goes, well, that is my name. But, you know, and it's like, it's kind of interesting to see somebody essentially interact with their own psyche and explain where they get the tropes from to create these worlds. Because obviously, when you're in dream logic, when you are dreaming, things that are in the dream are aspects of reality. Of course they are. You know, anyone who's had a dream where it's like, you know, you feel a certain way to someone in the dream you're interacting with, and, you know, they might be like, they might have the face of somebody else, but you're interacting with them as if they were somebody else, right? And that can happen, you know, a lot in dreams. Things can all get messed up because your subconscious is essentially reassimilating reality to tell you a
it's
story.
also like putting masks on the Jungian archetypes, right? Like you have the prosecutor, right, or the man who's trying to help you or cheer you up in prison, and so you just have different masks that are getting shuffled around, but the fundamental roles within the psychology are still remaining the same.
Yeah. And I love the fact that even though it probably doesn't hold up as a logical exercise, I love the fact we go into the lives of the dream people. I love that, right? One of them, right? There's always one who believes him. Every time there's always one, and he gets drunk. He's like the fucking stenographer or whatever the fuck he's doing in the court, and he gets drunk and he goes to see the prosecutor, and he's like, I'm getting wasted because tonight the world's gonna end. And he's going, well, you can't believe him. He goes, I do believe him. And he's like,
Now, don't start it.
Gotta start. I'm not upset or disturbed or nervous anymore. I'm scared.
That's ridiculous.
I know it is, but that doesn't help.
Do you mean to say you believe that crazy story?
God help me, Hank, but I do. At least I believe it's possible. Well, why not? Can we prove he's wrong?
it's so fucking good.
Well, it's like the ego, right? That's what's fun about it.
Yeah. So why are we seeing the dream people? You know, the wife is cooking steak and she goes, "Oh, I've had enough of this. I'm off to bed."
By the way, the cut from the electric chair to the sizzling steak is
one of the all-time great. By the way, you remember when Game of Thrones did that thing where he takes off the grayscale and it cuts to a spoon going in a pie, and everyone went, "Wow, that's Kino," you know? Yeah, right. Electric chair to a sizzling steak, motherfucker.
It was great.
Like literally hard cut mid-sentence.
Yep.
And they turn on the chair and brilliant.
Good.
Absolutely excellent. And like you say, you know, I mean, really, again, it has this very similar profound kind of terror to it. Like, what if you couldn't escape from a set reality? What if nobody around you would believe you, would listen to you, even though you knew you were nailed on right? And what if you were just trapped to repeat a cycle that was seemingly unbreakable? I mean, at the time we joined the episode, it starts, it just, and we're just in the courtroom. I sentence you to death. You know nothing about the trial, nothing as to what is happening, because that backstory isn't created. He's been arrested, tried, and sentenced to be killed all in the same day, you know, because that's, again, dream logic. And I think the episode really works conceptually simply because it is saying to us, like, what would happen if you couldn't break a cycle? How would you react to it? He has probably been executed hundreds of times. He can describe the process in such vivid detail. He knows it's 78 steps to the room. He knows what color the room is. He knows what the hood smells like, you know? So this is something that's plagued him for an indefinite amount of time, and you can obviously understand the frustration and the terror of something horrible happening to you over and over again with the powerlessness to break that cycle. And I think this is a really clever episode of television. Might not be the scariest, but I think this is a very, very clever episode. It's one of the most memorable episodes, I think, from season 2. It's right up there.
I think
Why do you like it,
that
Thorin?
the way it's shown is actually, you yourself can't really know if the person's an unreliable character, like in terms of what he's saying. Like, it is plausible he is just mad, or this is just some sort of delusion of his own, etc. in the first part of the episode. It is only essentially, for me, when you actually see the same actors playing the different roles the next time around, that it totally concludes that it was all real. That, like, actually, he was right that this is just his dream, and then he picked all these characters out of nowhere. Like, they do a good enough job, like mixing up like could this be real with, and also, by the way, isn't that in itself, bear in mind this is all about a trial process, isn't that what 1 million Hollywood movies are based around? Like, no, I'm the one who realizes this guy is innocent, but everything just looks bad in the way it is, and I've got to try and get to the bottom. And in those, you don't get the happy ending that you find the piece of evidence, don't you, that the person didn't do it or whatever, you know. Normally that's a pretty straightforward trope, so I think it's even like an interesting twist on that. And I do think, if you notice, actually the ultimate horror essentially is like Nietzsche's eternal return, isn't it? It's the idea not of like something horrible happened, but the idea that like you're just doomed to repeat it over and over forever. That's a way more terrifying thought than even just an instance of something horrible happening.
Well,
so,
I'd be also surprised if this didn't really influence the show Severance today, because they do play with the trope of basically, you know, in Severance, they're talking about how the innies have no concept of time because it's like the only thing they ever do is work, right? They clock out and then they lose consciousness, and the next moment of consciousness they just clock in to work again. In the same way that the dream characters are just like constantly in the loop, or he feels like he's constantly in the dream because the dream ends and then it just immediately restarts, right? As if there hasn't been a break. This guy doesn't get any rest because his entire dream world is just this prison and this cycle of doing this, but you know, at this point, banal thing. We would normally call an execution banal, but for him it's banal at this point in time because it's been repeated so many times. And you have all these different characters that are playing these roles within this system, but there is no escape from the system. You're just, it's an entire closed universe. It's a hermetically sealed box with everybody inside of it, which is horrifying.
Yeah, well, I mean, the closing narration is the fucking is the absolute, you know, like just cherry on the fucking cake, because it is. We know that a dream can be real, but whoever thought that reality could be a dream? Turns out lots of people, Shakespeare, you know, lots of people, but whatever. We continue.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not the most most original thought that the Twilight Zone has put out there.
It's all right though. Rod's
right, for the normies of the 1960s, maybe it was.
We exist, of course, but how? In what way? As we believe as flesh and blood human beings, or are we simply parts of someone's feverish, complicated nightmare? Think about it. And then ask yourself, do you live here?
By the way, that's also the other part that is cool.
Instead,
essentially, they do also get you to relate to the character in the dream who believes it's all real along with him. So it does. Remember, that is a good premise, isn't it? It's like, I know now, actually, even though you laugh at it, that is like actually quite an incredible revolutionary idea. Like, what if you are part of God's dream or someone else's dream, right?
Or a simulation.
Why not?
Yeah,
well, the joke is, if you say simulation, everyone goes, yeah, now that is great. I totally think that could be true. Yeah. But if you go God, they go, well, fucking keep that nonsense away. It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be like
people just swallow. They're like, you know, people say, well, it's actually mathematically more likely that we are a simulation rather than real. And people are like, oh, interesting. Yeah, and then they're like, God, no.
Yeah, that's a step too far. So anyway, this was actually based on another short story by the other great contributor to the Twilight Zone, Charles Beaumont. If anybody isn't familiar with Charles, but I would expect everyone to be familiar with Richard Matheson. Charles Beaumont less so. Incredibly talented writer, wrote so many, you know, great episodes that were adapted to television, was a long time contributor to the Twilight Zone. His stuff is excellent. The short story this was based on is called Traumerei or Traumerie. It's like a German for daydream or something. And it was published in 1956 in Infinity Science Fiction. And they basically, it was so strong, the story, Rod Serling didn't really have to adapt it all that much. Now, for the trivia, and you guys will, this is a delight. There is also, in the 2000s, they created a number of episodes as radio plays. And the Twilight Zone radio plays are gold. I've got them. I had them as like MP3s that I downloaded off like fucking, you know, Pirate Bay or some shit. But I've still got the files on my computer. But I don't know if you can get if you can still get the sets or because, you know, they were sold on CDs. So I don't even know what the medium would be these days.
I mean, probably you get them on eBay, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. But anyway, I mean, some of the people that starred in these episodes as voice actors are incredible. And I mean, you are talking like Jim Caviezel, Lou Diamond Phillips, fucking who else? Ed Begley Jr. And anyway, this episode was adapted for the radio, and the main guy who's having the recurring dream, you know who it is? Ernie Hudson from fucking Ghostbusters. It fucking slaps so hard, bro. It's like so good. It's, and like I say, it's also a really interesting way to have the media, to hear the stories in the medium. What you realize when you listen to the radio plays is a lot of these stories just hold up, like just textually, like the visuals, you know, almost irrelevant. Not true of the next episode we'll talk about, but I mean, in a lot of cases, the stories are so strong you can just do them verbally, and they absolutely hold up. And so, yeah, I think if anyone wants to like listen to these stories or read these stories, if you track down the Twilight Zone radio plays, you can just listen to them like an audio book, and they are great. There's some really, really good performances. I mean, I remember one of my favorites is the Ray Bradbury theater, if anyone remembers that. And there is an episode of Marionettes Incorporated, which is narrated by Leonard Nimoy. It is one of the all-time great things I've ever heard, like on radio. It's so good. And yeah, if anyone wants to track that down, just as a little bit of additional homework, do recommend. So yeah, all right. I guess that.
And if you want to see the worst thing made by Leonard Nimoy, go look up his Bilbo Baggins song from the 1960s.
That is absolute trash. Yeah, I mean, look, everybody gets one. You know, David Bowie recorded "The Laughing Gnome" for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really be perfect all the time.
The music video for the Bilbo Baggins song is quite fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, look, Leonard Nimoy was a G. So
I like Leonard Nimoy. I just find that very strange. Both him and Shatner's musical careers very weird.
Almost like they were just playing characters you liked.
Well, Nimoy played more characters I liked than Shatner ended up doing. But let's go to the last episode.
Not a fan of T.J. Hooker.
The After Hours, which this one's a bit silly, but it is an interesting thought experiment about a woman who visits a department store, goes to an empty floor to buy a golden thimble, and then discovers that the woman she bought it from is actually a mannequin, and that the woman herself is actually a mannequin, and the mannequins take turns going out into the human world for a month before returning to become mannequins at the department store.
Here's what's underrated, Monty. You say it's silly, but I actually think that's proof that they did a really good job scripting the episode. Because
no, it's thought-provoking for sure.
At the beginning of the episode, is she in her house? Is she having her family life? She spends the whole episode inside the store, mate. The genius of the episode is you made the assumption she was a person from outside who's a real human who visited a store. Yep. Then when you're presented with the fact someone's a mannequin and there's this weird flaw, you just think she's a normal person being sucked into the Twilight Zone and she's experiencing all the weirdness. The actual premise, if you look, it's quite a tightly scripted episode. This is actually totally plausible within the concept that someone who's lost their memory of who they are, but they're still within the same... That part I actually think is quite clever because it's just us who make the assumption going into that, which is what carries the fear and the tension. And I actually find it's one of the better like twist reveals at the end. I find that quite satisfying closure, actually. I think it's kind of cool that she sort of understands that like they're different. I think that's actually dope, mate.
Yeah, well, I think I was just going to say, you mentioned Severance earlier. Severance did have an episode called The After Hours.
There you go.
So,
I mean, I find it very interesting.
Don't you think there's a red herring? The obvious red herring in this episode is this, Monty. When she goes, and the only item, everyone who's watched fucking shows knows this, when the only item in the whole store is the thimble, you're thinking it's one of those, like, you know, demon shopkeeper type things, or fucked up genie. So the red herring's great because it keeps misleading you, even though there is no ninth floor. Like that, what it does is it plays on other tropes from these sorts of shows to make you think you can guess the ending. Whereas I don't think you actually, put it this way, I don't think until the very end you ever guess that she's the mannequin, until basically like they have that the sequence where she's
it's a great twist.
You even think it's a horror of like mannequins can come to life, another classic one, and that they're going to attack you and kill you in the fucking thing. They play with so many tropes, and at the end actually it's not one that I guessed. I wouldn't have thought there was that angle necessarily.
Marcia. You remember Marcia?
Climb off it. Come on, dear. Marcia.
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 Come on,
We
dear.
know
Marcia.
You
Climb
remember
off.
Marcia?
Marcia.
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 Marcia. Marcia.
Marcia.
yeah.
Well, I like it because I think it's an interesting commentary on how we treat and view other people, because the implication is that, you know, these people aren't real people, and that when they leave your line of sight, they're in your life for a month and then they go away and they just become inanimate objects or mannequins. It shows that we view people with a lack of humanity at times, because it makes you think, oh, well, how would I treat this person? if I treated this person badly and they just became a mannequin again, it has no effect. But it's almost like an exercise in object permanence and empathy with other people, because it forces you to consider that when these people leave your life, they still have their own lives, unlike these mannequins, right? And so by putting it in front of you like that, I think it actually does generate empathy in the viewer and causes you to reflect upon how you treat people who are not permanent potentially in your own life, even though you could never know whether that person will become a permanent fixture or not for whatever reason. That's just how life works. But I do think that it has that effect on, it had that effect on me when I was watching it.
I mean, what I like about this episode, and sometimes dislike about the episode, because like you have to understand, because of who Rod Serling was, he didn't want his episodes to influence despondency a lot of the time, and it's very hard when you're doing something that is like horror based to sort of like jackknife out of it. Now there are some really malevolent creatures in the Twilight Zone. I nearly picked Mirror Image. That is genuinely horrifying. That is a really scary episode. But I wanted to add something that was a bit of a palate cleanser, and this is it, because this has a really sweet ending. You know, it's like really, you know, she goes from being in this nightmarish scenario and then realizing that she's not trapped. She's actually come home, and these are her friends, and they're not going to hurt her. And she has a duty to fulfill, which is to be the mannequin. And she's had her time with the people, and now it's time to come back. And you know, no one's going to hurt you. You've just lost your memory. Just relax, you know. And very often in the Twilight Zone, particularly where women were being affected, I think Serling had a tenderness that he never really wanted those episodes to be too scary. He never wanted the woman in peril to necessarily be doomed. And there are examples of that not being true. The Hitchhiker episode, Mirror Image is one of them. But I also think to like lots of other episodes where, like, you know, there's the one about the woman who's got the strange visitor that comes round, and she doesn't realize it's death, and then at the end she finally lets him in, and it's a young, handsome, beautiful Robert Redford, R.I.P. And it turns out that death isn't going to hurt you. We're just taking you to where
anyone
you
who
got
likes
to go.
The Sandman will appreciate this premise, especially what Neil Gaiman just did with that character in the Sandman.
Yeah. And so you know, the reason I picked this episode is I remember this vividly as a child, and I remember like mannequins are fucking scary. Like I don't give a fuck what anyone says. The artificial construct of humanity, and what I didn't realize as a child was that uncanny valley effect of somebody looking like a person but not being a person, something being identifiable as human but not human, is really unsettling. And obviously as well, if you like said to somebody, I was just talking to her over there, and you turn around and it's a fucking mannequin all of a sudden, you are going to lose your mind, because you're going to assume you already have.
Well, there she is. There's a woman who waited on me, miss. Miss, I wonder if you'd...
And so I think the build up to this episode is great. I mean, really sets a almost sinister tone right out the gate with the guy who goes, right, we're taking you up to the 9th floor. Why? Well, to go and get the golden thimble. And she gets up there and she goes, there must be a mistake. There's nothing here. And he just like shakes his head, closes the elevator doors and goes away. And of course, as you see at the end, he's one of them. He knows, and he's trying to like nudge her in the right direction. Yeah, wonderful. And I have to say,
this way, I make a prediction that when everyone watched this episode, including present company included, even if you thought there's something weird going on with the 9th floor or what's happened to this woman, I bet you never ever guessed that the people on the complaints department are also mannequins. You never guessed that. That's even clever too, because you think it's just one of those classic, there isn't a 9th floor, so you had like an out-of-body experience, you went to lost times. That part's even clever too, because it's only when they do, they're like, quick, everyone must leave the store, that you get this dawning realization everyone was a fucking mannequin, basically.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you've got to say this is a classic Twilight Zone episode in the fact where it walks up to the line of this entire premise can collapse in on itself. The thing that holds it upright is like Anne Francis is so good in this episode. I mean,
also a very beautiful actress, I've got to say.
In
real life, what a perfect look.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see why they picked it as someone that looked like a doll. She looks perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, she, but like again, we've talked about it in previous episodes, particularly for the occult arc with Mia Farrow. You know, when you want to have a woman in peril, you know, go for the big eyes and the expressive face and the tremoring moist lips, and there is something baked into baked into humanity. You want to help these people. Don't be afraid. It's gonna be okay. Please, please, please. And she's great. I mean, she goes full send in this episode, from bewildered to angry, frustrated, then to genuinely horrified, to scream when the mannequin reveal is exceptional work. And then of course she goes to being afraid when all the mannequins are talking to her, and then, you know, at the end you see her as the mannequin. And by the way, what a great final shot. It's ruined by the dude comes in and then looks at the camera like, bloody hell.
Yeah, no, that's one
that
thing I always say.
bit.
Like, if I could delete, because even though it's funny in the moment, it's like the one I always say, they do need to go back. If you want to use AI for good, use it to delete scenes from movies where, you know, fucking the Ninja Turtles bust through a restaurant and then some drunk just looks on like, what the hell's going on here?
Looks
like,
at the liquor bottle. I better quit drinking.
Sadly, that's a good gag in the cinema, but it ages badly. I know what you mean. You didn't need that at the end with that guy doing that. Like, you already nailed it. You nailed the shot. It's there. Don't oversell. You're overselling now, bro.
And again, a great closing narration now, which I've got. Marcia White, in her normal and natural state, a wooden lady with a painted face who, 1 month out of the year, takes on the characteristics of someone as normal and as flesh and blood as you and I. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Just how normal are we? Just who are the people we nod our hellos to as we pass on the street? A rather good question to ask, particularly in the Twilight Zone. So, I mean, this is a really good conceptual episode about, you know, the notion of self. And like Duncan rightly points out, you know, we essentially project onto the character our assumptions of what a person would be doing, what their life would be doing. We wrap ourselves up with the red herring and intrigue of the golden thimble, the doohickey, to essentially get her in the store and get her confused and get her wandering around and ultimately give her a quest, a fetch quest to, you know,
it makes us assume she actually has an aunt or whoever it was, mother or whoever it is.
Exactly.
She has a real life she's returned to. It's so clever the preconceptions it puts into you.
Yeah, exactly, and it's very, very subtle. And then, as I said, obviously, the first time I watched this episode again as a kid, when the mannequins start talking, I'm like, oh, this is really bad. These are going to start. It's going to be like that Doctor Who episode. Obviously, I hadn't seen then because it wasn't made. But you know, where the mannequins just keep moving.
The Blink one or whatever it's called.
The one with the fucking
it's the same premise. Because by the way, this is what people still don't get. Because everyone now wants every zombie thing to be World War Z and fucking all. They always miss that. Like, the real terror is the idea it's slow moving, but you can't escape. So at the end, when she's trapped in and I thought that could have just been a zombie ending, bro. You know what I mean? When they just gradually come in on it and she's help me. And there's no one there to help you. That alone's terrifying.
A more malevolent episode of the Twilight Zone would have had the mannequins coming to life, dismembering her and replacing her limbs and making her a mannequin. Right? That would have been that would have been the whack version.
And then her body would just be displayed in the department store.
But I will say the final shot where you see the mannequin version of her, man, that's crazy. That's crazy.
They do a really good job with it. Like, even the like quick, it must be like the same frame, and then he's put another frame in the cat because it looks like special effects, but it can't be. It must just be a real mannequin. And then they got this shot, so it looked so similar. There's barely any transition. It's actually, for when it's done as a black and white shot, it's unbelievable. That effect is really well done.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and listen, this was written by Rod Serling. This was actually his work in its entirety, not an adaptation. And I think, like, you know, it's just, this is like a charming episode. Like you almost feel a sense of palpable relief when the mannequins come out and go, no, you were just having your month off. It's time. You got shit to do. I always feel as well that there were a lot of episodes which were about acceptance of death and death not being that bad and heaven,
which is definitely about this too, because like, oh, you had your time on Earth, now time to come back. Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
And there's lots of episodes where they do that, and like there's the Willoughby episode, of course, and
by the way, I don't know about you, but I actually do find that very satisfying closure. Like it's one of the reasons I had an interest in things like Buddhism. I've actually always thought a really cool conception of life is the notion that the reason why there isn't really like nothing really makes sense about life. You just have to pick something to believe, basically, no matter what it is. Even the whole scientific explanation is absurd on its first level. It gets the craziest numbers ever with the most outrageous and likely things ever, and just goes, but it did happen because you're here to tell the story. So I've always thought a very satisfying piece of closure is the idea that when you die, maybe it's not even as you, something wakes up and then everyone goes, so what was it like? Fuck, you jumped in the earth pool and you had that experience. Like, it's my turn next. And you're like, and it's the analogy of the kid on the slide, the scary slide. But second you do it, you want to go and do it again, don't you? I've always thought that would be such a great fucking concept, of the idea that like you even just choose to have these bizarre earth adventures where some of them are awesome, some of them are fucking terrible. Because again, if people want to, by the way, get ready, dickheads, if you just use your dreams of VR and the Matrix, you all want that. You would all get the VR. You'd all Strange Days the fuck out of it, mate. You'd all be doing the ones where you're a criminal who gets killed when you jump over a thing. You'd all do the ones where you're a gunfighter.
I love that concept.
We'd all do that, yeah.
Days.
But that's what
so
I mean.
good.
I think everyone can fuck with the idea, but like actually as a metaphor for like life, that's kind of a cool angle too, isn't it? It's the idea that like it isn't just a random thing that happened. Maybe this was like a pre-programmed experience or something.
I mean, obviously, anyone that's done DMT as well. Like, I mean, you can go to fucking, alternate realities. I mean, I've talked about this a lot. You go and you do things as a different person, essentially, with a vague concept of self, and then you exist in a space which the time doesn't match up. You're under for 15 minutes, but people talk about it like, fucking, you can be out there for years, centuries, you know what I mean? And it's always like super interesting to think about in terms of like Duncan says, you have a little earth adventure and that's life, and then you go back to some sort of greater sense of self, and maybe you do get another turn, another go around. That is a very Buddhist concept, the idea of the bardo when you die in the process, and you essentially go through and your soul is cleansed and then it's put back into the pool for recycling, and depending on the life you lead, you come back as either a higher form of life or
go watch our Enter the Void episode.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. But I mean, just for this, I think like this is an episode that really puts you on. You think it's going to be scary, and then it turns out to be wonderfully sweet at the end. And in the last shot, I guess depending on how you view the episode, it can either be disturbing and sad, because I really liked her, she's back to being a mannequin, or as Duncan says, it can be a really good, satisfying sense of closure. She's back where she needs to be. There's no more terror. There's no more anxiety. She's got
everything makes sense now.
Yeah, it all makes sense to her. She's going to be fine for 11 months, and then she gets another go around. So yeah, obviously I know we've got a hard out today, so I'll start just wrapping it up. We nearly did do Nick of Time, another Richard Matheson episode with William Shatner in, where they are essentially beholden to a little Satan head, that's like a magic 8-ball where you put money in it and it answers your questions, but it always answers them vague enough to imply something bad will happen if you leave the town. And ultimately, again, it's about like, self-determinism and versus fate, etc. Great episode and scary for different reasons. Another one where people are doomed to repeat things and trapped, but I decided not to do it. But
all right, look, tell us if you guys like it. Tell us to do another one. This is your jam. I don't think we're gonna run out of Twilight Zone material.
Well, definitely not. I mean, I would certainly say maybe if we ever do pick this up again, if people like the episode, we could just delve into season 4 and look at some of the hour-long episodes, because they are many of them are really bad and drawn out because the concept is so thin that it really needed to be the 25-minute classic. But some are really, really good. I mean, there's like an excellent one with Burgess Meredith, who was like a staple in the Twilight Zone. You know him as Mickey from Rocky. There's one called Printer's Devil.
That one's good. I watched that one because you told me to watch it. It was good.
And it's just wonderful with his crooked fucking cigar in his mouth. Yeah. And it's basically about, they've got a machine and he can make
typesetting machine.
Yeah, typesetting machine. And whatever he puts in it will happen. And therefore the newspaper always gets the news first. And
it's a great concept.
Yeah. I mean, wonderful concept. That's a great
It's the ones that have really bizarre premises. Like I'm a fan of that one, The Obsolete Man, where a man
yes,
basically is
also
a librarian
Burgess Meredith.
and he has this massive trial. And again, it's just one of those really out there concepts. Also, we don't have to do the Twilight Zone. Like if anyone wants a classic Outer Limits one, put it this way, Monty, you should definitely look this up. There is an episode. It's the 3rd episode. It's called Architects of Fear, and it is literally what Alan Moore took the premise for part of the Watchmen reveal at the end from this episode. And basically, it's a perfect example, by the way, of how suspension of disbelief works. Because obviously, the practical effects are utterly absurd now, but you won't think that when you watch it, because like a play that is really good with great actors, you won't be thinking about the fact that they don't have CGI. You'll just be thinking about the concept of what they're putting on the screen. And again, if you've ever read Watchmen, the premise, you'll know exactly where he took it from.
I'll also add on the reboot of Outer Limits in the 90s, the opening pilot episode of that is an adaptation of George R.R. Martin's short story, The Sand Kings. And that's an absolute banger as well. I mean, like, I guess this is a good point to wrap up the show. There's a reason that these anthology shows like kind of endure and are so beloved by so many people, because the promise it makes to you every week is it's going to take you to a strange new world. It's going to introduce you to strange new characters. It's going to pull you, push you around, and then it's going to have a twist ending that's going to hopefully, provoke some form of thought that you can then apply to your everyday life. Or maybe it's just going to be spooky and shit you up for 5 minutes, and that people want that. People I understand we live in an era of like everyone's trying to do prestige TV now with big overarching narratives, which I love. I fucking love True Detective, and I love Deadwood, and I love The Wire, and I love The Sopranos. They're fantastic, but episodic television really does something special because it's like resetting an Etch a Sketch every week. We can tell you another story, something totally different. It can be scary, it can be charming, it can be saccharine, it can be all of these things, whatever you really want.
Well,
and that's what the Twilight Zone did better than anyone else.
I mean, there have been more anthologies recently, like Love, Death, and Robots is, pretty popular. And we've got Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities.
Which remember has the Pantos Cosmos.
It has the Pantos Cosmos,
which we need a second season of that fucking badly. And this is why I think the Twilight Zone is such an important touchstone, because it is a format that clearly people have a thirst for, even in the modern era. Love, Death, and Robots, it's been very hit and miss. The most recent season, I knew we were in for a bad time when it opened up with that fucking Chili Peppers thing, which didn't have love, death, or robots in it.
I haven't seen the latest one. I was afraid of it. But what was in the first season? They had the one about the I think it's called Sonny's Choice. It was the one about the aliens they used to fight with by taking over their consciousness.
Yeah.
Fucking love that episode. It's such a great concept.
I mean, there was some, really good ones. Like, there's the Dark Passage as well, about the fucking sentient crab monster that takes over the pirate ship. That fucking bangs. And it's like, look, all of this, obviously Black Mirror as well. All of this is the Twilight Zone. Charlie Brooker said Twilight Zone was the inspiration. He wanted that. I mean, there's another great one that people don't really talk about called Inside Number 9. It's basically the Twilight Zone meets Alan Bennett by the writers of League of Gentlemen, and that just finished. There's 9 seasons of that. It's probably the best show people aren't watching. Yeah, hit and miss in the way that all anthologies are, but it's great. But as I said, this is the progenitor. This is it. The Twilight Zone. This cube like this cube of physical media is like a testament to me that there was this great television show, like the greatest television show, the most influential television show ever made. It existed, and it holds up to this day with the performances, with the special effects, with the most importantly, with the
theme
concepts.
song. The doodle doodle doodle. It's just so iconic.
Yeah.
You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.
Like, bro,
You can't escape this.
I used to hear that come on, and I was already scared. You know what I mean? No matter what the episode was. So it's just it is my passion. I adore this show and everything it's given me out of life. I love sharing it with people, and I think when people do engage with the material, they do find things that they like too. And obviously, because it's so old now, you really open not a Pandora's box. You open a treasure trove of maybe a Pandora's box. I don't know, but you open a treasure trove of there's like 5 seasons of this to dig into. There's hundreds of episodes, like you know what I mean, including the very last one, which was the syndicated short film of occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, which constantly comes up as being one of the most influential short stories.
One of the only It Was All a Dream that's actually really good.
Yeah, that's actually really good.
Yeah, that's why people copy. By the way, another anthology show I never hear people shout out, so I'm going to say it is. I love the one that was called Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams.
Yeah,
I actually think that is just better than Black Mirror. It's the same premise, but it's just better. And by the way, it has real Hollywood actors in it. It has like fucking Terrence Howard and Bryan Cranston and like some super famous actors in it as well.
That was made by Amazon?
So,
Amazon
yes.
Prime.
It was Amazon Prime.
Yeah, because they that's probably why not as many people have seen it. Because
I thought it was a banger personally. That's some really good episodes.
Yeah. Also, it is it shares the name with a really goofy comedy from the 80s, which is it's like Weird Science, but it's like the computer becomes sentient and falls in love with the guy. It's like I don't know. Something like that. But yeah, Electric Dreams is a good show. So,
well, that'll do it, guys. I hope you enjoyed your first one night stand. That means, of course, that you will have to do the walk of shame if you did not actually watch the content that we are talking about.
Just do it for me.
Do it for Richard.
They're
only 20-minute episodes, guys.
Yeah.
They're literally on Paramount Plus right now. But when we were talking about doing this first, it wasn't on there. They actually put this on Paramount Plus relatively recently.
Yeah.
So it's cool that you can watch all of the Twilight Zone on there right now. So go check out those episodes. It's so palatable. Instead of spending 20 minutes gaping at your phone, just fucking put on a 20-minute episode and watch it. I'll tell you which one will enrich your life more. So you're welcome. All right, guys. We'll see you with your regularly scheduled foreplay next episode.